Episode 6, Snufferclyde Castle. 2019. Taylor was found outside the school, sitting on the ground by a Joshua tree, with her elbows on her knees and her hands on her face. Luni stood in front of her, looking down. She knelt down to make herself as small as Taylor felt. Behind them, the sun was setting, sending a bright shade of orange across the desert landscape. "Did I say something?" Luni asked. After a low, hopeless sigh, Taylor choked out, "Not everything's about you. I've got issues, okay? Leave me alone." "But I don't want to leave you alone like this." Luni sat next to her. "I don't want you here," Taylor said. "Okay." Luni fidgeted with her hands before shifting the stand. "I'll leave." Taylor abruptly reached out for her. Her fingers grasped the collar of Luni's yellow and red polo shirt. "No, please." Taylor held on harder. "Never leave me. I don't know what I want. I get sad on this day every year now, but I can't tell you why. I want to. I trust you, which I hate this. All of this." "Okay," Luni said. She shifted her weight back towards her. "I'll sit here with you until there's something I can do that help you feel better." Luni got comfortable, and to her surprise, Taylor laid her head on her shoulder. She felt her entire weight, mental and physical, fall on her. It was a feeling that Luni liked. "You always make me feel better," Taylor said with a chuckle. "Happy spiraling day." "Happy emotional spiraling day," Luni said. "I bet I have mine next week, so clear that up on your calendar." "Early, though," Taylor said. "Never leave me. Please." "Okay," Luni said. "5 years later, as soon as Luni walked through the door, she noticed waves crashing down on the shore. Rows of white, frothy water roared and splashed about on the horizon. Birds chirped like a church choir singing a special they hadn't rehearsed. She had been transported away from the prison-like classroom and into the Sullivan Beach Park. For a few moments she didn't know what to do. The others couldn't be seen. Her feet sunk into the moist sand as she approached the waters. The black cat followed her heel, too close for her to walk. "I don't see Snufferclyde Tower anywhere. I have to find Taylor." "What now, Boot?" Luni said, holding the leather shoe out in front of her. The cat rubbed against her leg, meowing, causing her to buckle at its weight. Where were the others? She had assumed the door would lead them to the classroom to begin the test. They wouldn't leave anyone behind, would they? "I don't know," the Boot said. "I haven't been out of the classroom in years. Getting to the tower is part of the test." "Hey, what's with you and Taylor? Your confession back there seemed kind of damning." The cat's cries grew louder. 100% nothing," Luni said, dropping the Boot in the sand. "Either help me out or you are staying there." The Boot coughed up sand. "Come on, you called her your marigold. If you knock boots or what?" Luni threw up her hands and vented, walking in circles. The cat followed, pawing at her feet. Of course she would ask that. Why can't two people be special to each other? Maybe we don't know what it was. Driftwood rolled along with the wind near Luni's feet. She closed her eyes. "But I was hurt by it. So I have to admit it was something now. Don't I?" she said. "I know I'm heartless," the Boot said, "and my sins are unatonable, so take my words with a grain of salt, but no one's forcing you to take the test. You can run away right now. There's no Gladorian force field keeping you here. Luni bent down to pet the cat, deep in thought. The cat whined even louder. A wave swept up, and as murky waves reached the boot, it cried for help. What did the cat want? Attention? Was she hungry? She thought of this when her stomach growled and rumbled. Before the boot could be swept out to sea, Luni grabbed it. She placed the boot in the safe place on land. Yes, there is, Luni said. There is some kind of force keeping me here. The further I go, the closer I get to her. So, let's feed the cat and find a way to get to the tower. Can we catch a fish somehow? She removed the fish hook from the boot's leather and held it towards the sun. Light reflected from its brass in rainbow patterns across Luni's field of vision. The ground shook. Instinctively, she grabbed the boot in one hand and the cat in the other. The sand beneath her shook so hard that it seemed to hover. A giant wave that stretched almost to the sun approached the shore. Luni spotted a large pile of driftwood and threw herself on the other side. She held the cat and boot tight as water crashed on top of her. Salty water entered her lungs and throat before she stopped herself from taking a deep breath. Something pushed on the wood pile beneath her, and large sticks and logs rolled on top of her. She found herself stuck, underwater, without breath and without the use of her arms. Kicking the wood hard, she tried to free herself, but instead the waves rolled more wood on top of her. Her vision blurred as the last of the sun above was covered. With one last kick, she tried to propel herself upward. When she did, she saw a speck of white light reflecting above. With all of her strength, she stood up, kicking her legs like a frog towards the surface. She coughed up water and gasped for air. Something was looking at her, right in front of her, so close that its heavy breath was blowing her wet hair behind her. With large silvery blue scales and horns that seemed eel-like. Shark fins and coral ran along its spine. Ocean water dripped off the teeth in a mouth larger than her body. Its white void eyes seemed to glow. Luni tried to find courage. Is this part of the test? If so, I need an IEP or something. The dragon roared. Luni dropped the boot and cat and covered her ears. When she realized what she had done, she was able to pick the cat up, but the boot sunk like a rock into the standing water. As she dipped down, the creature lunged at her. Its teeth caught some of her hair, and she found herself being dragged upwards. She reached out for the boot and took hold of its shoelace. The further she was dragged along in the water, the more the lace unraveled from its eyelets. Luni realized she was being carried towards the open ocean. The cat fought to keep its head above water. The boot was running out of laces. With a pull, she tried to move it closer to take hold, but the end of the lace yanked out. She could only watch as the boot floated down towards the sea's bottom. She tried to cry out, but water rushed into her mouth. She lifted the cat above the water with one hand and hit the snout at the creature with the other. Her punches seemed to hit with the force of a thin sheet of paper. In the corner of her eye, she spotted a flash, a reflection of the sun above. She realized the dragon held the fish hook with its tail. If she could get to it, she could fight off the beast. But she was helpless. Doing the only thing she could think of, she tossed the cat onto the creature's back. This surprised it, and it flung its body up and turned to face the object that had landed on its fins. The cat hung on for dear life. The creature released her hair, freeing Luni. She grabbed the scales, realizing they were sharper than they looked, and pulled herself up. It bucked like a wild bull. She was thrown back, but she reached out for the fishhook on its tail. The creature roared the same ear-splitting sound. This time, she fought the urge to cover her ears and with both hands tried to pry the hook loose. It would not budge. The creature dove into the ocean, dragging Luni with it. The cat let go. Luni saw this and swam towards it. The creature had turned back to face her. It sprinted towards them, opening its jaws wide. As a last-ditch effort as the dragon swallowed her whole, she kicked a hanging flap in its mouth. Right before the incoming water could force her down into its stomach, she felt herself being spewed from its mouth. She grabbed the cat and swam as hard as she could towards the surface, turning around and hoping it had retreated into the water. It had not. It sped towards her, but she saw something else above. Land, she thought. She swam with the current upward, feeling dizzy and lightheaded the faster she went. Fighting to stay awake and alert, she kicked and paddled with one hand. The creature's mouth caught hold of her shoe on her left foot. Somehow, she lifted herself out, leaving her shoe behind. For a moment, she felt relieved. Then she realized this thing could walk on land. She found herself on a rocky shore with a giant tower in the middle of an island. She ran in the direction of its front doors. The dragon threw itself on the shore, twisting and turning about after her. She zigzagged, trying to avoid its mouth. When she had gained distance, it roared again, sending out a blast of water, knocking her down. "Oh, come on!" Luni cried out as she regained her footing. Luni dashed to the tower stone entrance, but the doors would not open. She could feel the heat of its breath on the back of her neck as the dragon fast approached, cutting her off from any reasonable means of escape. Something hissed. To Luni's surprise, Black Cat leapt at the dragon, giving her only moments. She tried to slam the stone door entrance, but the creature's snout, pressed up against it, kept it open. The cat ran to her feet and whined. It drew back to cast another blast on her, but she slammed the door shut. The creature roared and snarled. Luni panted, still holding the door shut. She let out a long, deep breath as she listened to the creature's footsteps walk back in the direction of the ocean. What was that about? She asked the cat. Warm lights turned on in the stone room. She faced a large pillar in the center of the bookshelved room, a line of dusty old tomes. Junk hung on the walls. For a moment, she felt like she was in a barbecue joint, the type of place filled with license plates and old posters. In the center of the pillar was a door. A plaque above it read, NBS to enter, solve the riddle. The Knotberry Society. Why is that here? Taylor didn't mention that before, she thought. Why would they have a room here? I thought the High Wizard was part of the evil they were fighting, he and Barry. Before she could finish reading the riddle, mysterious music played. Welcome, students, a voice cried. You have passed the first part of the test. During the next part, the final, no notes or cell phones and keep your eyes on your own work. The first part is Guar safety. A loud humming and buzzing noise filled the room. Sparks flew in the air. Luni cursed. Books from the shelves along the walls of the room fell to the floor. From them, dozens of bright flickers of light danced into the air. Luni squinted and realized the fairies holding the paper targets flew in the air were probably not normal. A loud, winding electronic sound came from one of the creatures, and a small bolt of energy came rocketing towards her. She dodged it by jumping behind a stack of crumbling books. Hit all 27 targets and gain entrance to the next room. Good luck, the voice said. At once, all of them shot at Luni. She picked up a book with the Japanese title and held it out as a shield. One of the magic bolts struck it and incinerated its paper. Still holding out her hands with her eyes open wide, she realized she was in trouble. "Are you gonna help?" Luni cried out to the cat. After she had done so, she felt foolish, since what could a cat do anyways? Even worse, she spotted the black creature ducked between two books on the lower part of the shelf. Light shone past it, giving the impression that a tunnel lay behind it. "Thanks a lot," she thought. She picked up book after book, using it as a shield, and crossed to the room to the door. She caught glimpses of the riddle as she fended off the fairies. "Place me at the foot of the door to enter. I have a soul, but there is no heart in my center. I can walk 100 miles in a cinch, but I cannot move an inch. I give rise above the ankle, giving support. I am the protector and the leisure and sport. You tighten me if I am loose. There are two of me, yet I do not reproduce. I am uncomfortable if I am not dry. What am I?" Luni's mind danced in confusion as she destroyed book after book in self-defense. What on earth was this riddle talking about? "I hate riddles so much," she thought. "It could be anything. If only I had that boot to help me. I bet he would have known what there are two of that couldn't reproduce." The magic bolts came faster and faster. She took off her only remaining shoe and flung it at the fairy, who dodged and shook its fist at her. "Hey," it shouted, "what do you think you're doing?" "You attacked me even though I don't have a weapon," she said. "That's not my fault," it said, sending a blast her way. She rolled and threw books at the fairies in the room, who all complained after being hit. "That doesn't count," said one of the fairies, holding their hand to their now blackened eye. "I can't use a guard to hit the targets. I can't get into the NBS room. How am I gonna get out of here?" she thought. And more, where is Taylor and the other members of the class? A voice rang out over the intercom. "You have 1 minute to complete this part of the test." Luni cursed again. How could this get any worse? A loud thud rang out from outside the stone entrance. Outside, the dragon-like beast bellowed out, shaking the walls and sending some of the tomes scattering across the floor. The fairies panicked and released shots even faster. One struck her arm, causing a giant burning welt to appear. She cried out, "I did not want to play Dungeons and Dragons today." Something flashed in front of her. A man stepped forward and shouted, "Decease and desist!" "That is a trademark you are not allowed to use." As he spoke, he clicked his two boots together. "Boots!" Luni shouted, seemingly randomly to Devon, the lawyer. "It's the lawyer," one of the fairies said, flying to the suited man's face. "Get him!" At once, all the fairies shot their bolts towards him. Unaware of what was happening, the bolts struck him over and over. He fell on his back. The doors burst open. "Sorry, Devon," Luni said, pulling off one of his boots. "I'll make it up to you." "Why are you stealing my boots? I will remember this," he cried. She did not answer. Instead, she placed the boot in front of the Not Berry Society door. The entrance gave a chime as it opened. Devon snapped his fingers, and in a flash disappeared back to wherever he had come. She rushed in before the blue and silver scaled dragon could reach her, but it led into a hollow area in the pillar. She turned, and once again came face to face with the beast's snout. She had backed herself into a corner. The floor dropped from under her feet, causing her and the dragon to fall into the long, dark shaft. She let out a scream and waved her arms as she crashed down onto the cold stone below. Her vision and mind went black from the impact. She came back to consciousness when she heard a loud, reverberating whimper. Above her, the dragon kicked and swung its tail, trying to free itself. It had gotten stuck in the shaft. "You poor thing," she said to herself, trying to stand to her feet. A fire in the room crackled and flickered. She saw something in front of her, and realized the dragon was still grasping the fishhook by its tail. Her hands covered her face as she dropped to avoid its frantic frailing, missing the top of her head. She crawled away to a safe distance before looking back up. There's no way I can get that thing out of here, she thought. Where was she? Stone arches lined the ceiling with artifacts and items dangling down from it. There were cells in the room's corner with iron bars with more cages inside. In the middle was a seated pit where a fire burned. Smoke rose into the air, into an outdoor venting system. Luni noticed hundreds of little tunnels connecting to narrow bridges. A churning sound came from somewhere in the room, along with the high-pitched, steady metal noise. The stones seemed mismatched as if the room had been placed together over several years. By the fire stood a metal altar. On top sat a glass bottle filled with swirling purple liquid, topped with a soda cap. She read, written on a label, Ravana's memory aid. Luni backed away. A cold feeling came over her. I want nothing to do with this room, she thought. The dragon still cried in the tunnel above. Flames rose higher. Thoughts raced through her mind. Why did the Not-Berry Society meet there? If Ravana was an evil, oath-breaking wizard, then would that mean the group belonged to the High Wizard? As she backed away, trying to rationalize anything she could, she felt something cold and hard on the back of her neck. She jumped and turned. There in front of her stood the statue of a little girl, about 12 or 13, her face frozen with a painted expression. A statue that seemed to be the same texture of Mr. Fingerhopper had been. The girl looked as if she had been in a hospital gown. That's when Luni noticed a name tag. Her eyes widened at the name. Idis Whitaker. Is this Mr. Whitaker's daughter? The one who had died? She wondered about what her statue was doing in the dungeon. Luni had heard Taylor swear to him that she had tried all she could do to save his daughter. It didn't look like that was the truth. Not with the horrified expression locked in the eyes of the poor girl. There had to be some mistake, Luni thought, finding herself unable to look away. Taylor is here, in the building, somewhere. I had to find her, and I had to find out what's going on. A bell rang from somewhere in the halls. Luni jumped. She looked from tiny path to tiny path, her eyes scanning the walls of the room for the origins of the noise, but could see nothing. I've got to get out of here, she thought. Stone bricks dropped from the ceiling. The dragon had kicked so hard that the walls were crumbling. She searched for any sort of exit or passage or anything that might lead outside. She found nothing. A large piece of ceiling fell near her feet. A voice rang out from above. Students do not leave the building until the test has been completed, even if the tower collapses. School policy. Another stone fell, hitting something hollow on the floor. A rusted trapdoor sat above the pit with words inscribed on it. Luni could hardly make out what it said, but finally pieced it together. Do not be unspoken. Speak the password and I'll open. If a train leaves Friday an hour past 8 and leaves almost 3 hours too late, what meal will they have ate? Luni balled her fist. Why does everything here have to be a really strange riddle? She thought. There was nothing to be done with so little time and so little context. More stones crashed to the floor, and the dragon roared louder. The fishhook fell with a clang. The building shook. Luni's eyes darted to the memory aid. What's inside that bottle is my only choice. She didn't want to, As the world literally crashed around her, she feared that her last memories would be of doubt. With no time to lose, she dashed to the altar in the pit. A deep wooden basin rose from the floor as she approached. Its material smelled so pure and still smelled of fresh pine. She reached over it and grabbed the bottle. With the bottom of her shirt, she twisted the cap, but it wouldn't open. She tried again. Her face grew red as she gritted her teeth. Why does it have to be a pull-off cap? She searched for something, anything to open it. She remembered the dragon's fishhook. Taking it, she used the sharp edge to pry the cap loose. Leaning back, she drank the entire thing. A glimmer of the wooden basin seemed to illuminate through the purple glass across the room. It tasted chalky and salty, but it didn't matter. No matter how bad it was, she needed anything that could help her escape, anything to help her solve the riddle. When she had finished it, she looked at the label and gasped for air. That's when she noticed the words written, tiny, at the bottom. For viewing purposes only. Do not drink. For crying out loud, she said. She felt woozy and weak. What had she done? Stumbling back into the pit, she found a place to sit, hoping the feeling would pass. As she sat, memories came to her. Not her memories, but those of someone else. She felt as if she had sat in that room many times before, many years. She remembered faces and people she had gone to school with. That's impossible, she thought. I didn't go to school here. I only knew of the place because of Taylor. That didn't seem to matter anymore. A sharp recollection came to her. Taylor, standing on top of the frightened girl, crying out for her father. Are you sure? Luni remembered saying, but not in a voice like her own. A man's voice. Once you go through with this, there is no backing out. It is permanent. In the memory, Taylor nodded. Luni nodded and petted a black cat with a dangling bell around its neck. Please, I want to go home. I want to get better, the girl says. It'll be over soon, Taylor says in an almost whisper, closing her eyes. She places her carrot wand on the girl's forehead and whispers a long spell. Luni saw the life drained out of Mr. Whittaker's daughter and flown into Taylor. The girl then turned to stone. Luni bowed, but now she realized she was not in her own body, but one of a man with an orange curly beard. You are now an Oathbreaker, a yo-yo wizard. If you die, she will return to life in the exact state she left it, still sick, still dying. Not be long before I am defeated and Barry returns. Whatever happens, you must defeat him and bring me back. Taylor nodded. The real ground shook. Luni put a hand to her mouth. She used me. Though only for a moment, she sat rocking back and forth, trying to understand what everything meant. But she had no time. She crossed to the hatch. Tuna sandwich, she said. The hatch opened, sending clouds of dust into the sky past the statue of Itis. Luni kept looking back at the girl, trying to piece together everything she knew. About how the girl had called her Kimama because she was at the hospital so much they became friends. Luni could see the memories. Mr. Whittaker's daughter was sick, she thought. Why Taylor? Why a yo-yo bond? The dragon roared in a burst of anger. It puffed and snorted with increasing intensity. She soul bonded with Itis Whittaker to save her, to give her more time. Oh my God. That's why she said we can't be, she thought. The walls crumbled from the trapped dragon's thrashing. Still, Luni would not look away from the little girl. A thought entered her mind. A thought that excited her, but the more she thought, the more she understood what the implication of the thought could bring. Popkus, she thought. If Taylor and the kid could switch places, it could heal her. I can't leave Idas down here, unless... I don't want Taylor to have to switch places, fading in and out of my life until I die. How can anyone make that work? But I don't want to leave her ever again. Why didn't she tell me about this cat-loving magic cult? I don't want to let her go. But Idas Whitaker deserves to have a life. The stone statue of Idas Whitaker was hollow to Luni. Like an umbrella, she put the object under her arms and dashed to the hatch. What was left at the shaft cracked, sending the dragon crashing down to the floor below. Luni fell, with the girl facing up. As she fell, she watched the dust and the rock and rain fall on the dungeon. Dang it, Marigold, Luni thought.